Good morning. So as is so often true, there are spaces right up front and up here on the edges. If you can help people know where the available seats are, that will help folks who are arriving know what some of the possibilities are. Yeah, welcome. Good morning, good morning. I see there's a seat there. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa. If this is your first time here, welcome. So let me give you a heads up in case you have an involuntary reaction to the word. In a moment, way too early in the service, I'm going to use the word bylaws. But don't let that stop you. So there is some proposed new language for the bylaws that spell out who we are as congregations that choose to band together to be the Unitarian Universalist Association. So congregations like this one that choose to be together. The new language claims that our deep purpose as an association of congregations, the purpose beneath all the practical reasons to pool our energies, is to actively engage members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. Phew. Big task. Love is the power that holds us together amid all our differences, the wording claims, and love is at the center of our shared values. All the rest of those words in those bylaws, they spell out ways or things that help us live that liberating love. So as we do on many Sundays, in a moment, we're going to take time to say hello and connect briefly to the people around us. But before we do, this is true for online as well as in the room, I invite each of us to take a few increasingly slow breaths, especially the longer and longer out breath. Go ahead and use your pace, but let your breaths get longer and longer. Oh, that changes things, doesn't it? The goal is to get present in our bodies, in our hearts, and to feel for just a moment what it would mean to be centered in love when we say hello to the people around us that we may not even know. Imagine, what would it feel like, and where would it come from to be grounded in love, even to say a simple good morning or hello? What would it feel like in your heart? What would it feel like in your head? What would it feel like in your body to be centered in love, even for the moment? So, with that pause and that preparation, I invite you to let love guide you as you say hello to the people around you, online and in the room. And I invite us to help make sure everyone's greeted meaningfully this morning. Lovely. Lovely. We do need a bigger building, don't we? Yeah. With parking. Need a bigger building with parking. Carol Grant offers our land acknowledgement this morning.
Good morning. With this basket of black oak acorns, we express our heartfelt desire that the Nisenan people may recover more and more of their rich cultural heritage. We commit to support them in these and other efforts in whatever ways we can, under their guidance and at their request.
Thank you, Carol. And Dorothy and Ralph Hitchcock offer our chalice lighting words this morning.
This is how to get close to your wife.
How many years?
55. In the spirit of love, we light our chalice.
Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values.
To shed light on our interdependence, we light our chalice.
We honor the interdependent web of all existence with reverence for the great web of life, and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it.
To find each other in pluralism in the midst of difference, we light our chalice.
We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology.
To encourage our expansive pursuit of justice, we light our chalice.
We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive.
In hope of transformation, we light our chalice.
We adapt to the changing world.
To call us to generosity, we light our chalice.
We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope.
To raise the power of equity, we light our chalice.
We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness.
In the spirit of love, we light our chalice.
Yes, in the spirit of love, we light our chalice. And I'm glad I don't have to light the chalice. I was nervous about that.
Well, I'm glad it worked out that way then, Ralph. And thank you. And we send this light and all those values just named to go with, as our young ones go to Kids Connection. I'm sorry the rest of us stay here, but the young ones get to go to Kids Connection. And we'll sing them on their way with this little light of mine.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains. I'm Cheryl Morris, serving as worship associate today. Kevin explained the proposed bylaws change. See, I'm going to say the word too. Bylaws change. That is the topic of today's service.
If you were with us last summer, you may remember that we spent July and August exploring the proposal with a Sunday service devoted to each of the petals on the flower that visually depicts our values, with love at the center. Recently, Kevin sent a link to a personal values exercise, which I hope some of you had a chance to work with. And if you didn't, you'll do it today. This exercise has us begin by identifying our values and then walks us through several steps to reach a verb that translates the value into action. I found it really interesting to do. And then in preparing for this service, I came across another approach that conceptually flips it around so that actions lead inevitably to values, or maybe the actions actually reveal the underlying values. Mahatma Gandhi put it this way: your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. So, as with many things, different paths to the same end, the importance of our values. Whichever direction we start with in examining the link between values and actions, bringing both into our conscious awareness is what's needed to keep us from running on autopilot or feeling complacent. If you're new to our denomination, maybe even a first-time visitor, I hope this isn't bewildering, but instead piques your curiosity about who we are and who we want to become. We love questions and invite you to ask us anything. And come back next week and stay for UU 101 for a more comprehensive look at Unitarian Universalism. As for today, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
We Belong to Each Other by Reverend Gretchen Haley. We are keepers of hope, holders of memory, storytellers and song weavers pulling on this thread of truth, this other march of history that might otherwise fail to find its footing. That life is filled with kindness, bold beauty, courageous compassion, sacrifice for the common good, and a wide willingness to embrace neighbors and strangers as kin. We are here to do the work of hope, remembering the past, remembering ourselves, imagining our most possible future for this life that teeters too often on the edge of forgetting. We belong to each other. Bring all you are, every shadow and every light, every hope, every fear for this radiant hour. Come, let us be hope for each other. Come, let us worship together.
On the road from
something a little out of the ordinary today. I invite Keith Johnson to come up for some appreciation offering. Thank you, Keith.
Good morning. I'm here to recognize our visiting stewards today. And for those of you who are new to the church, a visiting steward meets one-on-one with typically 3 members of the church, and they have a conversation. Now, yes, the conversation does eventually get around to the pledge and the pledge campaign, but that's not what the whole conversation is about. I'd say 90% of it is about the impact that UUCM has on our lives and in the future of UUCM. So now if all the folks that were visiting stewards this year, if you would please stand if you're willing and able at this time. I also understand we have Carol Nimick on Zoom, who was a visiting steward. Bob, any other visiting stewards that are on Zoom? Sophia. And somebody said Sophia is on Zoom as well? Okay. Yeah. Renee Wiley was a visiting steward as well? Okay. So I have some specific thank yous for the visiting stewards. One is thank you for your willingness to serve. Excuse me. There were 26 visiting stewards this year. And if you've been in the church for a while, you know that is just amazing. We've never had that number of visiting stewards. And because we had 26 visiting stewards, we were able to offer visits to every member of the church who wanted to visit. So again, that's fantastic. Not only a willingness to serve, but you did your job. And thank you for that. Now, the job of a visiting steward is, well, to visit. And I think you might have been a little bit nervous about that because it can be a little confrontational, but hopefully our training that we had with our consultant, Kay Kreider, helped you with that. And we know you did a good job. And the reason we know you did a good job is because you turned in your written evaluations, and those evaluations said that you enjoyed the visits and the people that you visited enjoyed them as well. I understand that at least one visit was 3 hours long. So thank you for that. Regardless of the length of the visit, meaningful connections were made. And that's really what this is all about. And lastly, I would say that I've been involved with stewardship since 2006 or 2007. Bob Bateman asked me to be on the stewardship committee that had newly been formed, and I said yes, and I've been involved with stewardship off and on ever since. And I can honestly say that because of the visiting stewards, this was the best stewardship campaign that we've ever had. So thank you so much for what you've done. And now, if you could stand again, if you're willing and able, and let's have some applause for the visiting stewards. Now, Laura is going to come up. We have a small token of our appreciation. And if you could come up like we do with joys and sorrows, if you could just come up through the center aisle, and Laura will give you your gift. Thank you.
Thank you to Catherine. Thank you to Carol. Thank you to Cheryl. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Chuck. Thank you to Leslie. Thank you to Anita. Thank you to Steve. Thank you to Lori. Thank you to Gwen. Thank you to Kern. Thank you to Jeff. Thank you to Claire. Thank you to Lisa. Thank you to Bob. Thank you to Carl. And thank you to Katz. And thank you to Gail, who was a steward. And I invite Gail to offer one more round of appreciation.
I'm Gail Schultz, treasurer of UUCM. And now I would like to thank and honor the group of people who put together our stewardship program over a 6-month period and led us to succeed with our pledge drive this year, the Stewarding Guidance Group. Please rise. Pam Kaiser, who I believe is not here, Carol Ritchie, Bob Miller, Keith Johnson, Jeff Gold, Laura Harder, Leslie Champlin, and not the least, our own Reverend Kevin Tarson. Thank you. This small group of people came together last August and began to work. The group included 2 members of the Board of Trustees, a finance representative, and representatives from our ministry teams. Some of them, like Keith and Bob, had experience with previous stewardship drives, and some did not. They made excellent use of our UU consultant, Kay Kreider, for guidance and training. They were willing to step outside their comfort zones and learn different approaches. They met frequently, almost every week, in fact. They worked collaboratively, cutting across any structural traditions of previous fundraising for this community. The result was a successful pledge drive that has exceeded our base goal of $250,000 and the creation of an effective organizational model. Along the way, they have educated us as to our community's financial needs, inspired 26 people to step up to be visiting stewards, put together a community-wide dinner, and I believe ensured that each member and friend had the opportunity for a personal contact with someone who listened to what they value about this community and their thoughts about us moving forward. Thank you. Your treasurer is quite happy. And most of all, I really want to thank all of you in our community who responded, stepped up, and did your best to make the UUCM financial picture brighter. And now, for the Stewarding Guidance Group, we have a small gift for each of you as you have lit the way moving this community forward. Please come forward. And one final thought. You know, a visiting steward doesn't necessarily have to visit. I was recovering from spine surgery, and so the people I stewarded came to visit me. So anyway, thank you all.
Truly, thank you all the way around to everyone who makes this congregation happen, that in fact make it what it is. And thank you, Gail. I'll invite us to take a breath. Yeah, maybe unwind our bodies. Our Jewish friends and neighbors are celebrating Passover this week. I'm thoughtful, of course, about the incredible, painful, squeezed place Jewish people are in our nation. With the death in Gaza, as well as the desire to harm Jews by some people. So I have in my own heart this need to both decry the violence in Gaza and to decry anti-Semitism, right? To address both at the same time. It's hard to do one and not the other, I think. I invite you to take account of those kind of four basic forms of prayer. The thanks, please, oops, and wow. And see what they are for you today. What's the thanks? What's the thanks that's in you? The gratitude. All those things that sustain us, that come our way unbidden often, but which sustain us. And what's the please? What's the help that's in your heart? The longing, the call, the need. And what's the oops? The need for forgiveness, atonement. And what are the wows that take your breath away? Awesomeness of life and the world. With those thanks and please and oops and wows in mind and heart, I invite us to share in this weekly ritual of honoring that. For you, it might mean just being with that, being present to that which is in your heart and being aware of it. It might mean coming forward and taking a stone to represent all of that and placing it in the bowl of water. Might be typing in a little bit of actually what you're carrying in the chat if you're online, or simply typing in an O, very much like a stone that we place in the water. I invite us to hold each other, staying present to this time, staying present to our hearts, staying present to each other. As some people choose to come forward. I invite you to notice in you if there is a response to your thanks, please, oops, Wow. So there's something you hear in response, sense in response, something being asked of you, wherever that ask comes from. With the song and the singing of Spirit of Life, one of the most well-known hymns in our tradition, I invite you to call in and call upon your sources of anchoring and strength in response to all that moves in your heart. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to sing together. And so the Spirit of Life answers with lovely bell tones. So people gather together in a place like this, in a community like this, for many reasons. So I've asked this before, but I'll ask it again today, because every day is a new day. Why are you here? What are some of the reasons you're here? Whether you're here online, I'll be checking the chat, or here in the room. Why are you here this morning? For what did you come? Community. Inspiration. Support. Fellowship. Connection, food for my spirit. Hope, strength. Friendship. Love.
Avoid yard work.
To avoid yard work. What haven't we heard yet? Sorry? Refreshments? Humor. Music, guidance. Connection also listed online. So, wow, a range of reasons, right? Which is true every single time we gather. All these varied individual reasons. And at the same time, in a layer underneath all these individual reasons on the institution, or is an institutional level as well. So here are the personal reasons. On an institutional level, we gather as UU congregations, in fact, to nurture and pass on a tradition, Unitarian Universalism, and an institution, Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains, to those who will come after us. A tradition and an institution that we believe will serve the wholeness and the well-being of people in the community into the future. Now, I would note here that in our tradition, when we gather, we are not simply repeating and handing on the Unitarian Universalism or the congregation that was handed to us. We are always also shaping and reshaping them, honing, tweaking, fine-tuning the tradition and the congregation in light of the truths of this day as we understand them. In other words, this is where all our individual reasons for gathering and the institutional reasons for gathering meet. And so right here is where the UU tradition is perpetually incubating. It's incubating this morning in the light and the insight and sometimes the heat of you. Congregations are the highest institutional authority in our tradition. Congregations who voluntarily choose to band together as an association, to do together what they cannot do alone. In some religious traditions, when people gather, what's being nurtured and conveyed and passed on, at least at the surface, is a set of specific, officially approved beliefs, traditionally outlined in a creed. But by agreeing to be a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community is saying that that is exactly what it will not do. UU congregations may each set their own statements of purpose, make their own mutual promises or covenants with each other, decide who can be a member and how and why, decide whether and who to call as a minister, choose their leaders, make all their decisions so long as a congregation does not require members to adhere to a particular creed. Creeds define many religious traditions. The absence of a creed is part of what defines Unitarian Universalism, which is why it can be so challenging and why it's so tempting to say that in Unitarian Universalism, you can believe whatever you want. There is a truth to that statement, right? In terms of our individual religious beliefs, there's a truth to that. You get to choose, you get to discern your own beliefs, but it is not a complete truth, I would offer. So in this layer underneath our individual reasons for gathering and our institutional reasons for gathering, what we are cultivating here together and trying to convey and pass on is a set of very deep values that guide everything else. Values that members share enough to hold together as a congregation, as a community, and to anchor what this community does and why. And whether those values are spelled out explicitly or simply lived implicitly, these values, we keep interrogating and honing and fine-tuning in light of the truths of this day, the truths as we understand them. So whether we realize it or not, this is really what we're doing when we gather in any groupings as members of this community. We're anchoring and strengthening and questioning and sharing and learning to live and to pass on a set of deep shared values. Ultimately, I believe this is what every religion does, no matter how creedal. Although it can look like the be-all and end-all of a religion, a creed or a set of beliefs is an expression of very deep values, not actually the source of them, I suggest. It's an expression of deep values. When the two traditions, Universalism and Unitarianism, consolidated in the United States at the beginning of the 1960s, just before I was born, they had to decide how to articulate the core of what they shared. Universalists had rejected the idea that some people would go to heaven and some to hell, and instead believed that everyone would be saved. They believed, in other words, in universal salvation. God is love, they proclaimed, absolute love. Unitarians had rejected belief in the Holy Trinity and instead believed in a single divine being, God, and they believed increasingly in the teachings of Jesus as a very human, exemplary person. They proclaimed the importance of religious freedom, the use of reason, and the tolerance of religious differences. But when these two got together, trying to spell out what they could both agree on when they consolidated, that was a knockdown, drag-out process. Sometimes it was a knockdown, drag-out between the traditions, but often it was within each tradition. The Unitarians in particular argued among themselves about the right words to use, including whether and how to refer to Jesus or God. Of all the challenges of consolidating these two traditions, it was trying to spell out a set of principles that deadlocked and all but derailed the consolidation several times. This was the crux, right? A number of my seminary professors who were there talked about how challenging this was, how hot it got. At a standstill, the two bodies from the different traditions adjourned their meeting at 1:30 in the morning, finally, after which a few very determined individuals from each group kept working, really in the very middle of the night, to reach a set, ultimately, of 6 principles that they could all agree on. Enough. They were meeting separately, but in nearby locations, and both traditions approved that set of 6. And they weren't intended to be final. They were intended to serve for that time until such time as they needed to be changed. So after Unitarian Universalist women in the 1970s proposed a resolution to, quote, avoid sexist assumptions and language in the future, a revision of those principles in 1984 no longer included words like mankind or brotherhood, or phrases like men of goodwill to refer to all people. And you use, yea, indeed. You use also at that time added a 7th principle to name respect for the interdependent web of all of life, not just human life, right? So they were growing and changing. The new association built into its plans the need to keep looking at these principles, to keep honing and fine-tuning them at least every 15 years, based on the truths and understandings of the new day. And as an association of congregations, we are way overdue. It's been about 30 years, almost 40, and a new articulation of what we share has been developed and proposed. It was affirmed last year, and it's about to receive a final vote in June, not by institutional bigwigs, they're not the ones voting, but by delegates representing all the UU congregations, including delegates from this congregation. Member congregations decide if this is the right thing to do. Incubating at the large scale. The proposal for these changes to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, which is where such things are spelled out, shifts from a set of principles to a set of values. And unlike the existing principles, the new language includes words of action, naming what these values ask us to do besides simply holding them as values. As Cheryl noted, we held a series of services last summer looking at these proposed values, and they have been some of our monthly themes this year: transformation, generosity, justice, equity. This month, interdependence, and next month, pluralism. All values rooted in love, it is proposed. I'll be inviting you to explore these values in one of several possible ways during May, and to weigh in on the proposed changes so that your delegates have some guidance for how to vote. But first, why? Beyond being an embodiment of our interdependence as congregations, and beyond serving an institution, why does this effort to name our shared values, our core values, matter? So for just a moment, I'm going to turn to politics, sort of. 30 years ago, as conservative efforts were rising in the United States, George Lakoff started trying to help progressive people in the United States to more effectively influence the social and political realities in the country. In his updated edition of Don't Think of an Elephant 10 years ago, he wrote, he pleaded, really, because he's been saying this for years. You need to speak from your moral perspective at all times. Progressive policies follow from progressive values. Get clear on your values and use the language of values. Drop the language of policy wonks. It's the values underneath that matter. And rather than just saying that we think or believe or feel that something is important to us, supporting trans youth, for example, dismantling racism, addressing climate change, supporting social safety nets or reproductive health. Beyond just naming that those are important to us, he says, it's important for us to get clear about the values we hold that lead us to see those things as important. And then to actually speak aloud that language, the language of our moral values, the values that lead us there. Not merely to name where we want to get to, but what is leading us to want to get there. His research, he'd been looking at this for decades, said that when we hear and we reach out and influence one another at this level of values, it's a stronger influence. He said we have to use the language of values if we want to promote those values. Progressive values, he says, are rooted in a vision of a caring, mutually responsible community, which we go for with strength and commitment, which therefore means providing public resources for all. It means protecting freedom, protecting opportunity, protecting prosperity for all rather than some. It's values that call us to prioritize cooperation, trust, honesty, open communication. I'm taken with the possibility of naming our shared UU values as values and having shared language then to help us speak from our moral perspective at all times, or at least more of the time. Does the proposed new wording help us do that? Is the question to be voted upon. So I'm going to ask you about your personal values. For those who read the e-chalice and saw a link, I know some of you actually took some time to do that values clarification exercise. And some of you got that on your way in. It's still there in the e-chalice and it'll be in this coming e-chalice, so you'll have chances. It's not the kind of thing you do quickly, so it's the kind of thing you want to take time on. But in line with that insight from Mahatma Gandhi that Cheryl shared, I found that when I was doing it, I had to ask myself, am I identifying the values that I want to hold or think I should hold, or the value that my behavior shows that I actually hold? If I look at how I behave, what does it say my values are? I opted for the behavior route to say, what are the values that I'm actually living? Those must be the values that I'm holding. So I'm going to invite you to share your values in a few different ways. Actually, for those who are technology comfortable, I'm going to ask you to send in your values to a word cloud. Here's the QR code or the menti.com site and code to put in. I'll ask you to leave that up for a little bit, Cypress. You can, for folks online, I'm going to ask Eileen to put that in the chat. And if those ways aren't comfortable or available to you, you can also ask someone near you to put it into their phone. Or you can type them into the chat or call in a moment, call them out into the room, and I'll type some in for you. So, what are your core values? I invite you to call some out. If you're not typing them in, I invite you to call them out. Advocacy.
You want the verbs as well?
Let's start with the individual words at the moment. Thank you. Non-judgment.
Open-mindedness.
open-mindedness,
Compassion.
compassion, love,
Honesty.
honesty, inspiration,
Teamwork.
empathy, moment, teamwork,
Responsibility.
responsibility, kindness,
Gratitude.
gratitude,
Justice.
justice,
Equity.
equity,
Loyalty.
loyalty,
Encouragement.
encouragement,
Responsibility.
responsibility,
Shared power.
shared power,
Honesty.
honesty,
Flexibility.
flexibility,
Integrity.
integrity, commitment, fun, creativity,
Full potential.
full potential,
Community.
community,
Resilience.
resilience, flexibility, growth. That was one of mine. So I'm going to invite you to keep sharing these, both today and during the next week or so. You can send them in to the same thing. We'll have information in the e-chalice and some emails. And we'll keep seeing which values rise to the top of this effort. I'm going to share my screen in a moment to see where we are currently. So the words that show up most often are the largest. So far, love, creativity, equity, honesty, community are the big ones.
I love that love's in the middle.
Love is in the middle. Really nice point, which we said was true, right? That's a key. That's a key. So what I invite us to do in this process is I invite you to spend a little time getting clear about your own personal values. I find it really helpful. And to have to add the verbs to it, as the exercise asks, is also helpful. What's the action that's required? And then I invite us beyond this, as we're interrogating, sorting out these values, to work together to help each other learn to speak aloud the moral language of those values, right? Our world needs it. It needs for us to speak the moral language underneath those values. And that's what this effort is about. So during this next month of May, I invite you to find one of the ways to dig in a little bit and explore this with some others. One option will be next Saturday to join us for a hike, where we hike and reflect and talk and hike and reflect and talk. Keith Johnson and I are going to lead 2 sessions, one on the 12th after the service with soup, that looks at the history of those. What were those first principles? How did they get changed? What proposals got suggested and not adopted over the years? We're going to look at the history of those. And then on the 26th, Keith and I will look at, well, what's being proposed for now and how does that compare to what we've got already right now? So we'll have 2 after-service sessions to dig in a little bit with some other people. You can come to one or both of those. On the 25th, Diana Gibson and I are going to facilitate a spiritual retreat to dig in under what's the theological grounding for these values? In our tradition, why are we led to these values? So a half-day retreat, we invite you to come join us for that. And for all these, it'll help to know which ones you might be interested so we can plan for numbers. And finally, next Sunday, when we do our UU 101, which is our basic introduction to Unitarian Universalism, we've been this year using the proposed values as one of our anchors to look at them and feel them out together and say, how do these feel? Which ones feel important to you? What would you change? So all options, right? So check your e-chalice. So there's options next Saturday, Sunday, the following Sunday, most weekends this month. What I would name is that so far this congregation has named as its values really, explicitly, courageous love, compassion, sustainability, and justice. George Packer wrote that ideology knows the answers before the questions has been asked. Principles are something different, he writes. They are a set of values that have to be adapted to circumstances, but not compromised away. That's what we're looking at. Values that have to be adapted to circumstances, but not compromised away. Now, some Unitarian Universalists are sad at the thought of changing from our current 7 principles to the new expression of values. It's difficult to let go of something beloved and familiar. I think the proposed language moves us in the right direction. And there's more to those proposed changes, important words about purpose, about our sources of inspiration, about inclusion and systems of oppression and removing barriers. They're all extensions, really, of the values that are being named. Now, I know this may seem far away to some of us, as if it has little to do with you or this congregation, but in our tradition, this is exactly where it's at. And you have a chance, actually, to shape both the community and the tradition that you will pass on. I hope you'll take at least one opportunity in May to dig in. We'll also offer some things you can do on your own if working with other people is not your cup of tea. And we'll invite you then to help inform those of us who are delegates, including me, on your behalf, to know how best to think about voting in June. Aware that while we're together in June online with several thousand Unitarian Universalists, they might tweak some things. There might be some amendments. It could actually change. So knowing how you think and feel helps the delegates know how to vote on your behalf. With all of that, may we know our values. May we live our values. May we be able to speak our values, because Lord knows the world needs it. The world needs us to know our values and the language beneath them. So may we be.
So, this is the Article 2 language about generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Each week, we take an offering to support this church, as well as a community nonprofit that shares our values. This is a tangible and consistent expression of interdependence, and one which benefits us, the givers, by providing an opportunity to act on our values. This month, our partner is Citizens for Choice. Their mission is to promote reproductive justice through education, healthcare access, and advocacy. They have been a steadfast presence in this community since 1989. 25% of your offering will go to Citizens for Choice. If you'd like them to receive 100%, place it in the white basket, the white envelope in the basket, or designate it so if you're giving online. And the slide will tell you additional ways you can give. Thank you for your generosity. We dedicate these gifts to ensuring that everyone has access to safe, non-judgmental health care, and to deepening our involvement with the community in which we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, for being worship associate today, and Ralph and Dorothy and Carol for readings today, to Keith and Gail for offering gratitude for our stewards and the Stewardship Guidance Group and the congregation. Andy and Cypress, thank you. Bob, thanks for your additional support. Eileen for being chat host. Shanti for another lovely setting this morning. Thanks to our greeters, Lori and Gwen and Jean and all of those who greet unofficially. To Keith and Martha Turner, and someone else was there in the kitchen today with working with refreshments, and Lindsay and Cheryl Spalding for being with our young ones. So love is still at the center on the word cloud. It's the biggest one. Second one, in our pooled core values so far, creativity. Third, community. Love, creativity, community. Not a bad center. Honesty comes next. Honesty comes next, and then equity. So far, so far. I invite us to know a few things. Here's the UU 101 coming up next Sunday after the service. Great for everybody. Humanism discussion group on Wednesday. These are all on the website and etc. Singing meditation circle, fabulous thing on Thursday evening. UU Values Hike next Saturday. A spring concert is coming up. Ticket sales will be online. Our goal is to sell out. Siobhan is here to help. Siobhan is here to help with that. And if the tickets are more than you can afford, talk to me, talk to Siobhan. We want to make sure people come if they want to. And if you can't be here and want to buy a ticket so someone else can come, great. Great. It'll be a really wonderful concert. Gail reminds us to put dots for those packets of postcards that you've already completed. There's a chart outside the wall there. And as always, see the website and more for more of what's going on. So I invite us to sing this closing song, Woya Ya, which basically says, we're not sure where we're going. But we know we're going to get there, where there is. Here's the spirit of Unitarian Universalism. I invite us to rise in body or in spirit and to sing.
How we will get
We belong to each other. We are keepers of hope, holders of memory, storytellers and song weavers pulling on this thread of truth, this other march of history that might otherwise fail to find its footing. That life is filled with kindness, bold beauty, courageous compassion, sacrifice for the common good, and a wide willingness to embrace neighbors and strangers as kin. We are here to do the work of hope, remembering the past, remembering ourselves, imagining our most possible future for this life that teeters too often on the edge of forgetting that we belong to each other. Bring all you are, every shadow and every light, every hope, every fear, for this radiant hour, for every hour we share this journey. Let us be hope for each other. And so that we don't forget, let us remind each other with these good words, this benediction. Together, let us carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again, hopefully soon. Please stay for refreshments and connection. And otherwise, we'll see you next Sunday for that new theme of pluralism.